Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football. The Nebraska Cornhuskers continuing to stay active in the transfer portal under Matt Rhule as they bring in a very, very talented edge rusher, MJ Sherman, coming over from the Georgia Bulldogs. This all came together relatively quickly. MJ Sherman puts his name in the portal earlier this week, winds up going to Lincoln, Nebraska on Monday. A massive get for Matt Rhule. We're going to talk a little bit about what you're getting with MJ Sherman and then where this program is going under Matt Rhule again. This is a guy that we are extremely excited for to see in Lincoln. And as a college football fan, just rooting for it to work out. Nebraska fans deserve a team that is competitive. And I think Matt Rhule is going to take them there. Before we get into it, though, again, I just want to say thank you guys for the support you guys have shown. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Again, I like making these videos. I even like more just talking ball with you guys in the comment section. That is why we do it, and we really do appreciate all the support you guys have shown. So let's get into MJ Sherman first. So out of the 2020 class, he was a top 35 dude nationally, a 5-star recruit on most services, dripping with talent. And if you read what his MO was out of high school, it was kind of the uber talented, uber twitched up kind of guy coming off the edge. And he goes to Georgia, and he hasn't really seen the field in Athens that much. I don't know if it's a situation of being banged up or just that team in Athens, and you saw it on Monday night, is just so loaded on the defensive side of the ball. Guys like Nolan Smith, Travon Walker last year, you can be a very good football player and just struggle to get on the field for the Georgia Bulldogs. And I think MJ Sherman probably falls into that category. He's a guy that if he gets coached up the right way and it clicks for him, he's an NFL dude. He'll be playing on Sundays. You just take a look at the body. You take a look at the athletic traits. This guy can be really special. What I think he needs to be is just get a little bit more developed. And on the defensive side of the ball for Nebraska, I think they've lacked a little bit of talent, especially on that defensive line. MJ Sherman, to me, seems to be a guy that comes in and immediately makes this unit better. Whether he starts in his first year in Lincoln or doesn't, I don't think necessarily matters because he is adding a lot of depth to that program. And again, you look at some of the guys that are out the door, Garrett Nelson being one of them. MJ Sherman is a guy that can come in and hopefully replace some of that production, but also just replace some of that depth there. And he's a guy that's ready to play day one. And when you look at what these new coaches are trying to do in the transfer portal, they're trying to go get guys who are ready to play day one. And MJ Sherman is going to be a guy who brings that juice to the Nebraska Cornhuskers. I think he's an extremely exciting guy to watch. Reminds me a little bit of O'Shawn Mathis from last year. And O'Shawn Mathis probably didn't work out as well as a lot of Nebraska fans hoped. MJ Sherman, though, athletically, he's different. He's a different level dude. You don't become a top 50 prospect nationally without being an elite athlete. And Nebraska's not necessarily used to having this caliber of player into their program. Extremely excited about what that defensive coaching staff can do with a kid who is truly just dripping with talent. What I want to do now is just take a look at where this Nebraska team is going in the transfer portal and then kind of what we're expecting in 2023 under Matt Rhule. I'll start with my expectations. I expect Matt Rhule to come in and win right away. You see what he's done at other schools, Temple, Baylor. I get it didn't work out in the NFL. A lot of college coaches, including guys like Nick Saban, don't necessarily work out in the NFL. But when he's been at college, Matt Rhule, he wins everywhere he goes. In Nebraska, for Matt Rhule, it's probably the easiest place to win out of all three stops. Temple is a very tough program to turn around, and he did that. Baylor, coming off a ton of sanctions, turned them around. Nebraska is a school that they are the blue bloods. They have the culture. They have the fans. This is a place that I expect Matt Rhule to almost be his easiest job to turn around. And again, he's not going to have a problem getting talent. And we've seen how good Matt Rhule is at developing this kind of talent. At Baylor and Temple, he did not have the talent that he will have access to at Nebraska and still made them very competitive. At Nebraska, you couple his elite development, and I love the coordinator hires as well. I expect this team to start winning right away. And I'm not saying necessarily winning a Big Ten West or winning the Big Ten title, although I certainly think the Big Ten West is a possibility. But you're going to see them go to the bowl game next year, I think. Matt Rhule doesn't really accept that kind of standard, not going 6-6, especially at Nebraska. Now, getting to what they've brought in, I'll kind of highlight some of the guys I'm extremely excited about. One, let's just talk about the talent. Guy like Elijah Judy right here, coming from Texas A&M, MJ Sherman, two guys that were really sought after out of high school. Two top 100 guys in MJ Sherman's case. He's a top 50 guy. That kind of talent for Nebraska on the defensive line, that was a struggle. And we're not used to seeing Nebraska struggle so much on the fronts. When they were struggling under Scott Frost, that offensive line, that defensive line was not as physical as we're used to seeing under Nebraska. Matt Rhule's addressing that right away, getting two guys who are physically different from the other guys that are on this roster. Very excited about Elijah Judy and MJ Sherman. And then you add the offensive line, a guy like Ben Scott, who's a proven starter at the collegiate level. He's going to come in and start right away. I would be surprised if he doesn't, because the tackle play for Nebraska last year was just not up to par. You're also getting some playmakers on the outside. I saw Xavier Betts coming back to Nebraska. You lose a guy like Trey Palmer, that hurts. Billy Kemp is a guy that he's been banged up the last 2 years, but in 2020, he's an absolutely electric dude with the ball in his hands, especially in that short, intermediate, over the middle of field game. Having somebody who's going to be able to get open, be able to sit it down in zone coverage, beat man coverage, and be a safety blanket for whatever quarterback is playing for Nebraska this year. I think I'm really excited about him. And then I would be lying if I wasn't excited about what Jeff Sims brings to the table. A very highly recruited kid out of high school, goes to Georgia Tech, simply just not surrounded by the talent he needed to succeed. But you see the arm talent. You see the athletic ability. He's sitting at 6'3", 210 pounds. He can use his legs, which might be important for year one if that offensive line does not take a few steps. Casey Thompson, kind of a good athlete, but just really small and was getting absolutely crushed. Jeff Sims, I think, will be able to extend plays a little bit better. And if that offensive line needs to be protected a little bit and you need to see a little bit more play action, I think Jeff Sims is going to be able to run that offense really well. And if you ask me right now who I think quarterback one will be week one for Nebraska, I'm probably leaning Jeff Sims just based on the athletic capability he has. And you're seeing that as a kind of a common theme. Josh Fleeks from Baylor didn't necessarily get on the field for that Baylor offense, which stunk last year, but he's a very athletic dude. Chief Borders from Florida, another guy that a bunch of SEC schools wanted. Corey Collier, he's another guy that was a top 110 dude at Florida. The talent being injected into this program is big time. And I think what you're looking for now is, let's take this talent and develop it. And that's what Matt Rhule is great at. And that's something that Scott Frost realistically struggled with. The recruiting and bringing in talented dudes was not necessarily a problem for Scott Frost. The problem that Scott Frost had was developing that talent. And you never really saw it happen. And there was always like that one more year. Hey, we got a talent that, like last year in going into 2022, give Scott Frost another year. He's brought in a lot of good players. You're excited. Like that roster was talented last year and didn't even come close to playing to how talented that team was. I don't think you'll see the same thing with Matt Rhule, because he's a proven developer of talent. At Baylor, not working with nearly the amount of talent other Big 12 schools were looking at, and yet had double-digit win seasons at Baylor when Texas, Oklahoma, those teams are recruiting well better than you. And then at Temple, you're never going to bring in that much talent at Temple, but what did he do? He was able to scheme up and kind of develop the talent that he had in the program and put them in positions where they could be successful. You're going to kind of see that at Nebraska. But again, he's bringing in a lot of guys that were highly sought after out of high school, didn't necessarily find the fields at their previous schools. Very excited to see what Matt Rhule can do. And I have a feeling he's not done in the transfer portal. Bringing in MJ Sherman, probably the biggest get of the transfer portal for Nebraska. They're probably not done. Once Matt Rhule gets into spring ball, sees what else he needs to do on that depth chart, after spring ball, when that second portal window opens up, I have a feeling you're going to see Matt Rhule get active once again in the transfer portal. Again, Nebraska, a team that we're going to be talking a lot about because Matt Rhule, in my opinion, outside of maybe Luke Fickell, maybe Deion Sanders, probably the best hire of the offseason. Very excited to see what he can do at Lincoln, Nebraska. And again, we appreciate you guys checking us out. If you do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. We appreciate you guys. We'll talk to y'all later. Peace.